It's week 18, and if you're watching this, that must mean you still have a fantasy championship to decide whether your league finishes in week 18 or whether you play in a 2-week fantasy championship. You need to know who you can trust and who you can't in this pivotal week 18. So I'm going to break down all the fantasy relevant running backs, and I'm going to put them into tiers and tell you which ones you should start and which ones you should sit. Now let's start with those running backs that you've probably been starting all year and may not have in week 18, because of course the biggest part of week 18 is figuring out which teams are going to rest the starters, which teams are going to play the starters, how much these guys are going to play. These are the running backs that are on teams that really have nothing to play for in week 18, but are going to the playoffs, so they could rest their players. Starting with the Chiefs, they obviously have the number 1 seed locked up in the AFC. They're going to get the bye. That means Isaiah Pacheco and Kareem Hunt, no, not 2 stud running backs, probably not going to play a lot, if at all, in this game. They may play a little bit because, again, they don't want like 2 full weeks off, but you might only see these guys for a quarter, for a half, and they're splitting carries. Just don't do it with these guys. And I don't think you can do it with James Cook either. This guy has been great all season long, but the Bills locked up the number 2 seed. They can't get the number 1 seed, of course. They can't drop in the standings. They are locked into the 2 seed, and they do have to play in the first round of the playoffs. So sure, maybe they play the starters for a series, 2 series, but that's not enough to trust James Cook. And unfortunately, it might not be enough to trust Joe Mixon either. The Texans, although they don't deserve it, are the number 4 seed. They can't move up. They can't move down. They're going to be the 4 seed no matter what happens. Now, maybe the Texans want to play the starters a little bit more because they've been really bad, and maybe they want to try to find something. But again, you can't count on Mixon playing more than a half at the most, probably. And there is still a chance he doesn't play at all. And then rounding out the AFC, same thing for J.K. Dobbins with the Chargers. The Chargers are locked into a wild card spot. Now, sure, their seeding could go up or down depending on what happens, but they're going to be playing a road game in the playoffs no matter where they finish. I doubt we're going to see the starters much. You never know with Harbaugh. Maybe he's a guy that wants to play the starters, wants to keep that aggressive edge. We don't know. You're going to have to pay attention as the week goes on, and we are going to stream later in the week to help you out, so definitely check that out. But right now, you got to be a little nervous about Dobbins, especially last week he just came back from injury. There's really no need to put him out there for significant snaps. So Dobbins has been good this year. You're probably not going to be able to count on them in week 18. And then we move to the NFC, and the tricky one is going to be the Eagles and Saquon Barkley. The Eagles locked into the number 2 seed. They can't get out of the number 2 seed. They have nothing to play for in week 18 except Saquon Barkley can, of course, go for the rushing record. It's sounding like they're going to rest Saquon Barkley, which would be very, very, very annoying. Putting the team first. We want to see Barkley get that record, right? So right now I'm going to say you probably aren't going to have Saquon Barkley in week 18. Again, you're going to have to pay attention. Maybe he changes his stance. If Saquon does play, I think he's got to be a must start because he needs 100 yards to get the record. This is a game where he could go for 100 yards and a touchdown. So I think if they play Barkley and he goes for the record, he's a must start. But right now, I'm going to say you're probably going to be without Barkley in week 18. And you're probably going to be without Kyren Williams, too, as the Rams are locked into the division win. I mean, they're not locked into their seed. I think they could be the 4 or the 3 seed, but I don't think that's going to be super important to the Rams. And last year when the Rams had their playoff spot locked up, we did not see the starters play much at all. Sure, Puka did because he was going for the record. Too bad Sean McVay isn't the coach of Saquon Barkley. There's nobody going for a record here. Kyren Williams not going for a record. You're probably going to be without Kyren Williams this week. Even if he plays a series or 2, you can't trust him. And the same for Josh Jacobs. The Packers also locked into a wild card spot here. Yes, their seeding could change, but I doubt that's going to be enough for Matt LaFleur to give Josh Jacobs enough touches to be fantasy relevant. So, again, Josh Jacobs, been one of the best running backs, and now you got to bench him. That's the fun of week 18, I guess. And then finally, due to the stellar play of rookie Jaden Daniels last night, the Commanders locked up a wild card spot as well. Again, the seeding could change here, but I doubt the Commanders are going to care too much about that, which means you probably can't trust Brian Robinson Jr. in week 18. If you can even trust this guy anyways, he's been pretty bad down the stretch. But if you were thinking about it, I wouldn't, because I doubt we see the starters much, if at all, in week 18. All right, now let's move on to the must-starts. These are the guys that are locked in. We know they're going to play the whole game. Their teams either have to win or they're just finishing out the season and playing for pride. And we got to start with Bijan Robinson. He has to be the number 1 RB1 in week 18. Because not only does he get the Carolina Panthers, which we know that's a smash matchup, but the Falcons have to win. The only chance the Falcons have is if they win and Tampa Bay loses, and then they will win the division. So the Falcons are going to be throwing everything they got into this game. Bijan's been a stud. He's going to be a stud in week 18. Next up is going to be Jahmyr Gibbs. I know it's the Vikings. I know you say it's a tough run defense, but I don't care. This guy's going to get every single touch in what might be the biggest game of the entire season so far. The Vikings and the Lions on Sunday Night Football playing for the number 1 seed. They're going to throw everything they have at each other. You have to start Jahmyr Gibbs in Week 18. He's been awesome. He'll probably continue it. And you got to start Jonathan Taylor in Week 18. Sure, the Colts are eliminated, but they're still going to play. They're still going to play for pride. They're still going to try to win. And he gets a great matchup this week against the Jacksonville Jaguars. He should absolutely smash them. He's been smashing. If he didn't drop that goal line carry in Week 15, it would be 3 straight monster performances from JT. Keep him going in Week 18. And then next, thankfully, you can still count on Derrick Henry against the Cleveland Browns. Yes, this is still a tough run defense, but the Ravens play Saturday morning. And if they win that game, they lock up the AFC North. If they lose that game, the Steelers will have a chance to get the AFC North Saturday night. So this is kind of a must-win for the Ravens. I think they're going to try to win this game. That means we're going to see full Derrick Henry in this one. You got to start him in Week 18. And you got to start Bucky Irving against the Saints. The Bucs are in win and get in territory here. If they win, they get the division regardless of what the Falcons do. And it's the Saints, and Bucky Irving has been awesome. Yeah, you got to start him in Week 18. And now if Chase Brown plays in Week 18, I think you got to fire him up. I know it's the Steelers. I know it's a tough matchup. I know he's a little banged up, but I don't care. This is a must-win for the Bengals. They got to win. Hope the Broncos lose. I think they need the Dolphins to lose. I don't know. There's a lot of scenarios here, but this is an absolute must-win for the Bengals on Saturday night. And there's a chance, if the Ravens do beat the Browns, which we think they're going to do, that the Steelers could be resting their starters for at least the second half. So he might not have to face the full defense here. So if Chase Brown suits up, you play him. And then the last running back I'm going to put in this tier is Devon Achane. The Dolphins also in a must-win this week, and they need some help as well, just like with the Bengals here. But I'm going to say this about Achane. It comes down to Tua or not. If Tua plays, Achane is a must start. If Tua doesn't play, he's like barely a flex. You look at Achane this year, 22.6 points per game with Tua, 6.5 in games Tua hasn't started. It's a drastic difference here. So if Tua plays, he's a must start. All right, now let's move over to the strong starts, and I'm going to start with Zach Charbonnet going up against the Los Angeles Rams. Yes, the Seahawks are eliminated, and yes, we saw an annoying amount of Kenny McIntosh last week, but Zach Charbonnet is still mostly the lead back here. And again, the Rams not really playing for anything. They might not play their defensive starters very long. So Charbonnet could be getting a chance to go against the Rams second stringers. I think he's got to be a strong start. And then I'm going to say Aaron Jones, also a strong start. Again, in that Detroit matchup. Again, this is a must win for both of these teams to get that number 1 seed, to get the bye. Both these teams going to throw everything they have at the other team. Aaron Jones has been kind of okay for fantasy, but man, he's looked good. He gets the touches. Still think he's a strong start, especially in Week 18. And I'm going to put a bit of a surprising name here, and that is Ray Davis of the Bills going up against the New England Patriots. Again, the Bills probably going to play their starters very, very little in this game. That means we should see a ton of Ray Davis against a very bad Patriots run defense. We've seen Ray Davis when given the chance. He looked great. I think this could be a big Ray Davis game. I think he's a strong start in Week 18. And despite Breece Hall being a pretty big bust down the second half of the season, I still think he's a strong start in Week 18 going against that Dolphins run defense. They didn't look too great against Deontay Foreman and Jerome Ford in Week 17. Not scared of this defense. Yeah, he doesn't have the highest ceiling. He could always bust because he's on the Jets, but it's Week 18. There's not a lot of good options here. I'm going to still call him a strong start. And I'm also going to call Alvin Kamara a strong start if he does happen to suit up. He was talking like he wanted to play again this season. This is his last chance to play. Now, it is a tough matchup against his Bucs run defense, but he catches passes. You know, the Saints aren't playing for anything. Like, why not just give him the touches if you play him? So I think if he plays, he's a strong start. And by the way, if he doesn't play, I'm not going to talk about any other Saints running backs. Just ignore him. And I think Isaac Guerrero also has to be a strong start here against the Cardinals. Both these teams, the 49ers, Cardinals, playing for nothing. But look, teams that are playing for nothing in pride, they still go out and play hard in Week 18. This is the last game of the season. You want to put forth a good showing in that last game. Guerrero gets all the touches. This Arizona run defense doesn't scare me. He should be a strong start. Now I want to look at the other side here with the Cardinals backfield, James Conner and Michael Carter. I'm going to say if Conner gives it a go again this week, I know he tried to give it a go last week and it didn't end well, and he probably should and will get shut down, but as this time he hasn't. I'm going to still say James Conner a strong start. This 49ers run defense doesn't scare me off of James Conner. Now, if James Conner sits, I'm going to say Michael Carter a strong start. He was clearly the guy last week Obviously, Trey Benson didn't play. We'll see if he suits up or not, but Michael Carter looked pretty good. He can catch passes, so I'll say whichever one of these guys plays, they're a strong start. And then finally, I'm going to say Blake Corum is finally, in Week 18, a strong start because, again, I don't think we see much Kyren Williams at all in this game. And they're playing a Seahawks defense that isn't great against the run here, so I think Blake Corum could get a ton of touches in this. He's been good when given a chance. He's always got touchdown upside. Blake Corum, a strong start. All right, let's move on to the solid starts, and I'm going to start with Ameer Abdullah going against the Chargers. Wow, one of the biggest, shocking, most surprising performances of Week 17 was Ameer Abdullah just dominating this backfield and having one of the best running back performances. Now, this is a tough matchup on paper against the Chargers, except, like I said, they're probably going to be resting the starters, at least for a big portion of this game, so there should be plenty of chances for Ameer Abdullah here. He catches passes. I think he's very solid in Week 18. And I think Tyron Tracy should be very solid as well. Yes, it's a tough matchup against the Eagles, except again, they're probably not going to be playing their defensive starters much in this game at all. Like the Giants, even last week, they played hard. They beat the Colts. Why couldn't they go play hard and beat the Eagles with backups this week, or at least make it competitive? Tracy's got upside. He could score. He's a solid start. Then we got to look at the Titans backfield because they do get the Houston Texans this week. Again, not playing for anything. So we could see, the defense getting a lot of rest or not playing much at all in this. So we got Tony Pollard and Tyjae Spears. Tony Pollard, of course, missed last week with the illness, been dealing with an ankle injury. Tyjae Spears left that game in the third quarter with a concussion. So we don't know if either of these guys are going to play in Week 18. But if they do, I think they're both solid starts against what will probably be the Texans' second stringers. And if neither of them play, I am not starting Julius Chestnut. Next solid start is going to be Rico Dowdle against the Commanders. Again, I don't think we see a lot of the Washington defense, and they haven't even been good against the run anyways. Dowdle should bounce back in Week 18. He should get all the touches. He wasn't horrible in Week 17. He wasn't great, but he wasn't horrible. I think he's better in Week 18. And then I talked about the fact you might not have Josh Jacobs. I like Emmanuel Wilson against this terrible Bears run defense. The Bears playing for nothing. The defense looks checked out. Emmanuel Wilson has looked good when given opportunities this year. He's probably going to get the bulk of the carries for Green Bay. Roll him out there as a solid start if you need to. And if Chase Brown does happen to miss that game on Saturday, I think Khalil Herbert can be a solid start. Again, it is a tough matchup against the Steelers, and if the Ravens somehow lose to the Browns, the Steelers will be playing their starters all game long trying to win. But assuming that doesn't happen, he could be facing the Steelers' backups for at least half or more of the game. So Herbert, without Chase Brown, in this Bengals offense in a must-win game, got to be a solid start. And then I'm going to say on the other side there, DeAndre Swift, probably a solid start as well. Again, the Bears just playing for pride here. Green Bay probably going to bench most or all of their defensive starters. So this should be chances here for DeAndre Swift to finally, once again, have a good game. And I feel kind of the same way about Ramondre Stevenson. Buffalo probably not going to play their starters. So, hey, Ramondre Stevenson, even though he wasn't going to be the starter last week, was still the starter last week. And now Bills with second string defense. Ramondre should at least be able to have an okay game this week. And then I also like Jaleel McLaughlin this week. He looked the best out of any running back in that backfield last week. Had a pretty nice game. This is a must-win spot for the Denver Broncos against the Chiefs. Win and they're in. And the Chiefs probably going to be resting that defense for almost the entire game. So he's going to be going against second stringers. I think he could take advantage of this matchup and have a nice game. And then finally, here are the guys I consider flex starts. I'm not going to go one by one here because there's just too many guys to talk about, and really this isn't great options. But I will say Najee Harris, Jaylen Warren, if the Ravens win that game and we hear that the Steelers are going to bench the starters, you probably don't want to start them. Samaje Perine, I do like him in this matchup because, again, I don't think we're going to see a lot of Pacheco or Kareem Hunt, but if we hear like the Chiefs might play the starters a lot, you maybe have to pivot off of him. And then you can see the other guys here. These are all pretty much dice rolls, so if you need one, go ahead. And don't forget, we got you covered all week long. We got wide receiver, QB, and tight end start-sit videos just like this coming. Plus, we're going to be back either Friday or Saturday morning to stream to answer all those questions when we have more information about who's resting, who's not, who's playing, who's not. So make sure you join us for that. And if you don't want to miss it, make sure you're subscribed. Hit that notification bell so you get notified as soon as we go live. Good luck in Week 18.